Olivia Mercer clutched her phone, tears streaming down her face as she typed the desperate message. "Marcus, I hate to beg again, but I need $850 for rent. They're threatening eviction tomorrow. I swear I'll pay you back when my disability check comes." She pressed send before collapsing onto her worn-out futon, the weight of impending homelessness crushing her chest. The baby monitor on the coffee table crackled with the soft breathing of her 3-month-old daughter, Zoe. Olivia had exactly 27 balls, 43 in her bank account, an eviction notice taped to her door, and nowhere else to turn. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 2 miles away, in the penthouse office of Vertex Innovations, Jackson Donovan's phone vibrated against his desk. The 45-year-old tech CEO glanced at the notification, expecting another update about the upcoming product launch that had consumed his team for months. Instead, he found himself reading a message clearly meant for someone else. Jackson frowned, running a hand through his prematurely silver hair. This personal number was closely guarded. Only family and his innermost circle had access to it. The raw desperation in those few sentences made him pause rather than simply delete it. Olivia's phone pinged with a response that made her stomach drop. "I think you have the wrong number. I'm not Marcus." Horror washed over her as she double-checked the number. She had transposed 2 digits of her cousin's new phone number. "I'm so sorry," she typed back hastily. "Please ignore that. Wrong. A number." She tossed her phone aside, embarrassment burning through her exhaustion, another failure in what felt like an endless series of them. Jackson couldn't explain why he didn't simply acknowledge her apology and move on with his evening. Perhaps it was the mention of eviction and the implicit presence of a child that struck a chord. Or maybe it was just a welcome distraction from the relentless pressure of running a tech empire during a recession. "Is your housing situation really that urgent?" he typed, surprising himself with his interest. When Olivia saw the response, she stared at her screen in confusion. Why would a complete stranger care about her problems? Her first instinct was caution. She'd heard too many stories about online predators and scammers who targeted vulnerable women. Yet her desperate circumstances weakened her usual wariness. "We'll manage," she replied curtly. "Sorry to bother you." "I could help," came the immediate response. "No strings attached." Olivia scoffed. In her experience, especially after her accident and throughout her pregnancy, help always came with expectations. "Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers," she wrote back. "Smart policy," Jackson replied. He hesitated, then added, "I'm Jack, now I'm not a stranger. What's your situation exactly?" Olivia stared at the message, torn between desperate hope and ingrained suspicion. Why would you help someone you don't know? In his office, Jackson looked out over the city skyline, lights twinkling against the darkening sky. Why indeed? His executive assistant would say he was procrastinating on reviewing quarterly projections. His ex-wife would call it another impulsive distraction. Both would be partially right. "Let's just say I've been fortunate," he replied. "And I remember when I wasn't." It wasn't the complete truth, but it wasn't a lie either. 20 years ago, before founding Vertex, he'd lived out of his car for 3 months after being laid off during the dot-com crash. Olivia's exhaustion clouded her judgment. She hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch since Zoe was born. The baby had colic, and Olivia's injuries from the car accident 8 months ago still flared with pain when she carried her daughter. For too long. "I was a paralegal before the accident," she typed hesitantly. "Hit-and-run driver. Shattered my leg during my 2nd trimester. Still doing physical therapy. Can't work yet. My landlord's been patient, but his patience ran out." What's your Venmo? Jackson asked directly. Olivia hesitated, then sent her username. What did she have to lose? She could always block this person if things got weird. Seconds later, her phone buzzed with a notification. Olivia gasped. This Jack hadn't sent $850, he'd sent $3,000. This is too much, she typed frantically. I can't accept this. Consider. It breathing room, Jackson replied. Rent, groceries, baby supplies, one less thing to worry about for a few months. Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes, blurring her vision. She hadn't cried when the doctor told her she might always walk with a limp. She hadn't cried when her boyfriend walked out after learning about her pregnancy. She hadn't even cried when her former law firm replaced her with someone else during her medical leave. But this unexpected kindness from a complete stranger broke something loose inside her. Thank you, she typed simply, unable to find words adequate for her gratitude. You're welcome, Olivia, Jackson replied. Take care of yourself and Zoe. It wasn't until hours later, as Olivia was ordering groceries online for delivery, a luxury she hadn't been able to afford in months, that she realized something that made her blood run cold. She had never mentioned her daughter's name to this stranger. The next morning, Olivia woke to another message from the mysterious Jack. Hope you and Zoe slept better knowing the rent's covered. I have a proposition for you. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Olivia's guard immediately went up. Here it comes, she thought bitterly. The strings. What kind of proposition? She asked warily. Professional, not personal, came the swift reply. I run a company called Vertex Innovations. We need someone with legal background for a short-term project. Your cousin Marcus mentioned you were looking for work once you're recovered enough. Olivia nearly dropped her phone. How do you know my cousin? How do you know I have legal training? Her heart raced as she checked her social media profiles, all set to private. Who was this person? I apologize for the intrusion, Jackson wrote. After our conversation, I was curious. Your number is very similar to Marcus Chen's, who works in our legal department. When I mentioned the wrong number text to him this morning, he realized who you must be. He speaks very highly of your research skills. Olivia sank onto her futon, relief and unease battling for dominance. It was a reasonable explanation, but still unsettling. So this was all just a coincidence? She typed. Completely, Jackson confirmed. But perhaps a fortunate one for both of us. We genuinely need help with a project reviewing contracts before a major acquisition. It's remote work, part-time, flexible hours. Would you be interested in hearing more? Olivia's mind raced. It seemed too perfect, too convenient. Yet her cousin did indeed work for some tech company. She'd been sending out resumes for months with no response. Could she really afford to turn down this opportunity out of suspicion? I'd be interested in hearing more, she finally replied, cautiously. But I'd need flexibility. My physical therapy schedule is non-negotiable, and I have Zoe. Remote work, your hours, your pace, Jackson wrote back immediately. We'll provide a laptop and anything else you need. The pay is $45 an hour. Can you start Monday? As Olivia prepared Zoe's morning bottle, she couldn't shake the feeling that something about this situation wasn't adding up. The coincidence seemed too perfect, the timing too convenient. But with her savings depleted and another rent payment looming at the end of the month, did she really have the luxury of looking this gift horse in the mouth? What she didn't know was that across town, Jackson Donovan was having second thoughts about his impulsive decision, wondering if he'd overstepped boundaries in a way that would come back to haunt them both. Monday morning arrived with Olivia, logging into her new company email with the laptop that had been delivered over the weekend, a high-end model that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. Along with the computer had come a package of baby supplies and a note simply signed J. The gesture had brought fresh tears to her eyes. Her first assignment was straightforward enough: reviewing a series of acquisition contracts, flagging any concerning language. It was work she was qualified for, even with just her paralegal training, and the flexible schedule meant she could work during Zoe's naps and in the evening. By Wednesday, she had settled into a routine that felt almost normal. Wake with Zoe at dawn, physical therapy at 10, work while Zoe napped, more work in the evening. Her legs still ached, but having purposeful work again eased a different kind of pain, the one that came from feeling useless and dependent. A video call request popped up on her screen Friday afternoon. Jackson Donovan, the notification read. With a nervous adjustment of her hair and a quick glance around to make sure nothing embarrassing was visible in her tiny apartment, she accepted. The man who appeared on her screen was not what she expected. Despite knowing he was a CEO, she'd pictured someone older, perhaps more corporate in appearance. Instead, Olivia Mercer clutched her phone, tears streaming down her face as she typed the desperate message. Marcus, I hate to beg again, but I need $850 for rent. They're threatening eviction tomorrow. I swear I'll pay you back when my disability check comes. She pressed send before collapsing onto her worn-out futon, the weight of impending homelessness crushing her chest. The baby monitor on the coffee table crackled with the soft breathing of her 3-month-old daughter, Zoe. Olivia had exactly 27. 43 in her bank account, an eviction notice taped to her door, and nowhere else to turn. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 2 miles away, in the penthouse office of Vertex Innovations, Jackson Donovan's phone vibrated against his desk. The 45-year-old tech CEO glanced at the notification, expecting another update about the upcoming product launch that had consumed his team for months. Instead, he found himself reading a message clearly meant for someone else. Jackson frowned, running a hand through his prematurely silver hair. This personal number was closely guarded. Only family and his innermost circle had access to it. The raw desperation in those few sentences made him pause rather than simply delete it. Olivia's phone pinged with a response that made her stomach drop. I think you have the wrong number. I'm not Marcus. Horror washed over her as she double-checked the number. She had transposed 2 digits of her cousin's new phone number. I'm so sorry, she typed back hastily. Please ignore that. Wrong number. She tossed her phone aside, embarrassment burning through her exhaustion. Another failure in what felt like an endless series of them. Jackson couldn't explain why he didn't simply acknowledge her apology and move on with his evening. Perhaps it was the mention of eviction and the implicit presence of a child that struck a chord. Or maybe it was just a welcome distraction from the relentless pressure of running a tech empire during a recession. Is your housing situation really that urgent? He typed, surprising himself with his interest. When Olivia saw the response, she stared at her screen in confusion. Why would a complete stranger care about her problems? Her first instinct was caution. She'd heard too many stories about online predators and scammers who targeted vulnerable women. Yet, her desperate circumstances weakened her usual wariness. We'll manage, she replied curtly. Sorry to bother you. I could help, came the immediate response. No strings attached. Olivia scoffed. In her experience, especially after her accident and throughout her pregnancy, help always came with expectations. Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers, she wrote back. Smart policy, Jackson replied. He hesitated, then added, I'm Jack. Now, I'm not a stranger. What's your situation exactly? Olivia stared at the message, torn between desperate hope and ingrained suspicion. Why would you help someone you don't know? In his office, Jackson looked out over the city skyline, lights twinkling against the darkening sky. Why indeed? His executive assistant would say he was procrastinating on reviewing quarterly projections. His ex-wife would call it another impulsive distraction. Both would be partially right. "Let's just say I've been fortunate," he replied, "and I remember when I wasn't." It wasn't the complete truth, but it wasn't a lie either. 20 years ago, before founding Vertex, he'd lived out of his car for 3 months after being laid off during the dot-com crash. Olivia's exhaustion clouded her judgment. She hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch since Zoe was born. The baby had colic, and Olivia's injuries from the car accident 8 months ago still flared with pain when she carried her daughter. For too long. "I was a paralegal before the accident," she typed hesitantly. "Hit-and-run driver. Shattered my leg during my second trimester. Still doing physical therapy. Can't work yet. My landlord's been patient, but his patience ran out." "What's your Venmo?" Jackson asked directly. Olivia hesitated, then sent her username. What did she have to lose? She could always block this person if things got weird. Seconds later, her phone buzzed with a notification. Olivia gasped. This Jack hadn't sent $850. He'd sent $3,000. "This is too much," she typed frantically. "I can't accept this." "Consider it breathing room," Jackson replied. "Rent, groceries, baby supplies, one less thing to worry about for a few months." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes, blurring her vision. She hadn't cried when the doctor told her she might always walk with a limp. She hadn't cried when her boyfriend walked out after learning about her pregnancy. She hadn't even cried when her former law firm replaced her with someone else during her medical leave. But this unexpected kindness from a complete stranger broke something loose inside her. "Thank you," she typed simply, unable to find words adequate for her gratitude. "You're welcome, Olivia," Jackson replied. "Take care of yourself and Zoe." It wasn't until hours later, as Olivia was ordering groceries online for delivery, a luxury she hadn't been able to afford in months, that she realized something that made her blood run cold. She had never mentioned her daughter's name to this stranger. The next morning, Olivia woke to another message from the mysterious Jack. "Hope you and Zoe slept better knowing the rent's covered. I have a proposition for you." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Olivia's guard immediately went up. "Here it comes," she thought bitterly. "The strings." "What kind of proposition?" she asked warily. "Professional, not personal," came the swift reply. "I run a company called Vertex Innovations. We need someone with legal background for a short-term project. Your cousin Marcus mentioned you were looking for work once you're recovered enough." Olivia nearly dropped her phone. "How do you know my cousin? How do you know I have legal training?" Her heart raced as she checked her social media profiles, all set to private. Who was this person? "I apologize for the intrusion," Jackson wrote. "After our conversation, I was curious. Your number is very similar to Marcus Chen's, who works in our legal department. When I mentioned the wrong number text to him this morning, he realized who you must be. He speaks very highly of your research skills." Olivia sank onto her futon, relief and unease battling for dominance. It was a reasonable explanation, but still unsettling. "So this was all just a coincidence," she typed. "Completely," Jackson confirmed. "But perhaps a fortunate one for both of us. We genuinely need help with a project reviewing contracts before a major acquisition. It's remote work, part-time, flexible hours. Would you be interested in hearing more?" Olivia's mind raced. It seemed too perfect, too convenient. Yet her cousin did indeed work for some tech company. She'd been sending out resumes for months with no response. Could she really afford to turn down this opportunity out of suspicion? "I'd be interested in hearing more," she finally replied, and cautiously. "But I'd need flexibility. My physical therapy schedule is non-negotiable, and I have Zoe." "Remote work, your hours, your pace," Jackson wrote back immediately. "We'll provide a laptop and anything else you need. The pay is $45 an hour. Can you start Monday?" As Olivia prepared Zoe's morning bottle, she couldn't shake the feeling that something about this situation wasn't adding up. The coincidence seemed too perfect, the timing too convenient, but with her savings depleted and another rent payment looming at the end of the month, did she really have the luxury of looking this gift horse in the mouth? What she didn't know was that across town, Jackson Donovan was having second thoughts about his impulsive decision, wondering if he'd overstepped boundaries in a way that would come back to haunt them both. Monday morning arrived with Olivia, logging into her new company email with the laptop that had been delivered over the weekend, a high-end model that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. Along with the computer had come a package of baby supplies and a note simply signed J. The gesture had brought fresh tears to her eyes. Her first assignment was straightforward enough, reviewing a series of acquisition contracts, flagging any concerning language. It was work she was qualified for, even with just her paralegal training, and the flexible schedule meant she could work during Zoe's naps and in the evening. By Wednesday, she had settled into a routine that felt almost normal. Wake with Zoe at dawn, physical therapy at 10, work while Zoe napped, more work in the evening. Her legs still ached, but having purposeful work again eased a different kind of pain, the one that came from feeling useless and dependent. A video call request popped up on her screen Friday afternoon. Jackson Donovan, the notification read. With a nervous adjustment of her hair and a quick glance around to make sure nothing embarrassing was visible in her tiny apartment, she accepted. The man who appeared on her screen was not what she expected. Despite knowing he was a CEO, she'd pictured someone older, perhaps more corporate in appearance. Instead, "We'll talk tomorrow." Later that night, after Zoe was finally asleep, Olivia's phone pinged with a notification. Jackson had increased her hourly rate by 50% and sent a separate personal message. For specialized consulting services. Well earned. The gesture was generous, perhaps overly so, but it came at a moment when Olivia had been worrying about upcoming medical bills. Her physical therapy sessions were only partially covered by her meager insurance, and she had a follow-up surgery scheduled in 2 months to remove hardware from her leg. Still, something about the situation nagged at her. Why was a CEO personally handling potential fraud instead of involving his legal and finance teams? Why choose her, a contractor with paralegal training, for such sensitive work? As the days passed, Olivia continued her investigation into the other acquisition targets, finding similar, if less egregious, financial irregularities. Jackson remained appreciative of her work, responsive to her questions, but increasingly guarded about how the information would be used. 3 weeks into the special project, Olivia's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. "Olivia Mercer?" a woman's professional voice asked when she answered. "Yes, speaking. This is Diana Winters, VP of Legal Affairs at Vertex Innovations. Do you have a moment to talk?" Olivia's heart rate spiked. Jackson had specifically instructed her not to discuss her findings with anyone else at the company. "Yes, of course," she replied cautiously. "I understand you've been doing contract review work for us," Diana continued. "Your cousin speaks highly of your capabilities." "Thank you," Olivia responded, choosing her words carefully. "I've enjoyed the work. I'm calling because I'd like to bring you in for an interview for a permanent position in our legal department. Your work on the Praxis contract was impressive. The offer was exactly what Olivia had hoped for, yet the timing felt suspicious. "I appreciate the opportunity," she said. "May I ask how you became aware of my work on the Praxis contract?" There was a brief pause. "Your cousin Marcus brought it to my attention. Is there a problem?" "No, not at all," Olivia backpedaled. "I'd be very interested in interviewing." Andre, after arranging details for a video interview the following week, Olivia ended the call, her mind racing. If Diana knew about the Praxis contract work, what else did she know? Had Jackson shared her findings about the financial irregularities? The whole situation felt increasingly complicated. She texted Jackson, "Diana Winters just called to offer me an interview for a permanent position. Should I mention the special project?" His response came hours later. "Absolutely not. Keep that confidential. The interview is good news. You've earned it. We'll discuss more tomorrow." That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. Her legal training and natural caution kept raising red flags about the situation. Was she being paranoid, or was something genuinely wrong with this arrangement? Was Jackson investigating fraud to protect his company, or was there some other motivation she couldn't see? She decided to do some research of her own. Using the laptop provided by Vertex, she began searching for information about Jackson Donovan and the companies they were acquiring. Most of what she found matched what she already knew. Jackson had founded Vertex 15 years ago, built it into a tech powerhouse, divorced 5 years back, kept a relatively low profile for a successful CEO. Then she found an article from 8 years ago that made her breath catch. Tech CEO Jackson Donovan loses son in tragic accident. The story detailed how his 7-year-old son, Ethan, had died in a boating accident during a family vacation. The article mentioned that Jackson had taken a 6-month leave from Vertex following the tragedy, and his marriage had ended 2 years later. The timing aligned with what Jackson had shared during their call. Ethan would indeed be 12 now. That part, at least, had been truthful. But what about the rest? Digging deeper into the acquisition targets, Olivia discovered something that sent a chill through her. The founder and CEO of Nexus Tech, the company with the most problematic finances, was Richard Callaway, the man who had been operating the boat when Ethan Donovan drowned. According to old news reports, Callaway had been cleared of criminal negligence, but civil suits had been filed and later settled out of court. The connection couldn't be coincidence. Was Jackson using her to build a case against the man he blamed for his son's death? Was this about corporate diligence or personal revenge? Olivia closed her laptop, mind spinning with implications. If Jackson was pursuing a personal vendetta, he was potentially using company resources inappropriately, possibly even violating his fiduciary duty to shareholders. And he had made her complicit. Her phone chimed with a text from Jackson. "Need to move up our meeting. Can you talk now?" Despite the late hour, Olivia responded affirmatively. Minutes later, Jackson's face appeared on her screen, his expression tense. "Something's happened," he said without preamble. "Someone accessed the files you've been working on. I need to know who you've spoken with about this project." "No one," Olivia assured him. "But Diana Winters called about a potential permanent position. Could she have access to those files?" Jackson's expression darkened. "Diana works closely with our CFO, Lawrence Pierce. If she's seen those files, he probably has too." "Is that a problem?" Olivia asked carefully, testing his reaction. Jackson seemed to measure his words. "It complicates things. Pierce has close relationships with several of our acquisition targets. He might have conflicts of interest." "Including with Richard Callaway?" Olivia asked directly. The flash of surprise in Jackson's eyes confirmed her suspicions before he composed himself. "How do you know that name?" "I did some research," Olivia admitted. "I know he was operating the boat when your son died. I know his company is one you're investigating. What I don't know is whether this is about protecting Vertex or about getting revenge." For a long moment, Jackson was silent, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled but tight with emotion. 8 years ago, Richard Callaway took my son out on his boat, despite severe weather warnings. He'd been drinking. My wife and I weren't there. We trusted him, our friend, with our child. When the accident investigation revealed his blood alcohol level, he used his connections to avoid charges. The civil settlement included a non-disclosure agreement. Olivia felt a wave of sympathy, but pressed on. And now you're building a case against his company. I'm protecting Vertex from acquiring a fraudulent operation, Jackson countered. My personal history with Callaway doesn't change the fact that his company is built on financial deception. But it does create a conflict of interest, Olivia pointed out. You should have recused yourself from this acquisition decision and let him get away with another deception. Let him sell his fraudulent company to Vertex for millions while the board remains ignorant of what he's done. Jackson's control slipped, revealing the raw grief and anger beneath his professional exterior. I tried the legitimate route. I raised concerns with the board. Pierce, who happens to be Callaway's brother-in-law, assured everyone the financials were sound. The pieces were falling into place. So you needed an outsider to find proof, Olivia concluded. Someone with no connections to anyone involved. Someone who would see what was actually there, not what office politics dictated, Jackson. Confirmed. I didn't manipulate you, Olivia. The financial irregularities are real. Your analysis is sound. But you didn't disclose your personal connection or the real reason you wanted this investigation. Jackson's expression was grim. Would you have agreed if I had? The question hung between them, challenging and uncomfortable. Truthfully, Olivia wasn't sure. The legal and ethical implications were murky at best. What happens now? She asked instead of answering. Now I take your findings to the board with full disclosure of my personal connection to Callaway. Jackson said they can decide how to proceed with all the facts in front of them. And my role in this will remain confidential if that's what you want. You did nothing wrong, Olivia. You performed the task you were hired for with integrity and skill. The assurance should have been comforting, but Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that she'd been used, however noble the ultimate purpose might be. I need time to think about all this, she said finally. Jackson nodded. I understand. For what it's worth, I am sorry for not being fully transparent, but I'm not sorry for what we've uncovered. Callaway has built his success on deception, first covering up his responsibility for my son's death, now financial fraud. Exposing that matters, regardless of my personal feelings. After ending the call, Olivia sat in the darkened apartment, the only light coming from the small lamp near Zoe's crib. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of her mother's ethical dilemma. Had Jackson manipulated her? Absolutely. Had he lied? Not exactly, but he'd strategically omitted crucial information. Was his cause justified? Perhaps the financial irregularities were real, regardless of his motivation for investigating them. Olivia thought about her own situation, a single mother with a disability, desperate enough to accept help from a stranger, grateful enough to overlook red flags. Jackson had recognized her vulnerability and used it, but he'd also provided genuine assistance when she needed it most. The complexity of their relationship defied simple moral categorization. Her phone lit up with another text from Jackson. Whatever you decide about continuing with Vertex, the job offer Diana extended is legitimate and based solely on your merit. Your work speaks for itself, regardless of this situation. The message offered a path forward, a way to separate the legitimate opportunity from the ethical complications. But could she really work for Vertex, knowing how Jackson had operated? Could she trust that this was the only time he'd bend rules to serve his perception of justice? What Olivia couldn't know was that across town, Jackson sat in his home office, staring at a photograph of his son while confronting his own moral failings. He'd allowed grief and a thirst for justice to justify deception. He'd potentially compromised his company's integrity in pursuit of personal vindication, and he'd involved an innocent woman who had already endured enough hardship. For the first time in years, Jackson faced the possibility that his quest to hold Richard Calloway accountable had become its own form of destructive obsession, one that threatened to claim more victims than just the man he blamed for his son's death. Olivia woke the next morning to an email that made her blood run cold. It was from Lawrence Pierce, CFO of Vertex Innovations, requesting an urgent meeting regarding her unauthorized access to sensitive financial documents. The message was copied to Diana Winters and 3 other executives whose names Olivia didn't recognize. Jackson Donovan was notably absent from the recipient list. She tried calling Jackson immediately, but the call went straight to voicemail. Her text message remained unanswered. With trembling hands, she picked up Zoe and paced the small apartment, mind racing. Had Jackson thrown her under the bus to protect himself? Or was Pierce making a preemptive move to discredit her findings? An hour later, her phone rang with an unknown number. "Olivia? It's Marcus?" Her cousin's voice was tight with concern. "What the hell is going on? Pierce is on the warpath, talking about corporate espionage and legal action." "Marcus, I can't explain everything right now," Olivia said, trying to keep panic from her voice. "But I need to know. Is Jackson in the office today?" "Jack? No. He's at some emergency board meeting off-site. Has been since dawn." Marcus paused. "Olivia, whatever you're involved in, be careful. Pierce has security going through server logs to see what files you accessed." After hanging up, Olivia made a decision. She carefully documented everything. Screenshots of her communications with Jackson, her analysis of the financial irregularities, her research into the connection between Pierce, Calloway, and Jackson. She encrypted the files and sent them to her personal email as insurance. Just as she finished, her laptop screen suddenly went black, then displayed the Vertex logo before shutting down completely. Remote access revoked. Minutes later, her phone chimed with a notification from her bank. The latest payment from Vertex had been deposited, significantly larger than her normal fee. A payoff? A genuine final payment? She couldn't be sure. Olivia sank onto her futon, Zoe cradled against her chest. The baby sensed her distress, becoming fussy and difficult to console. "It's okay, little one," she whispered, though nothing felt okay at all. She'd allowed herself to trust again, to hope for a better future, and now everything was crumbling around her. The knock on her door at precisely 3 p.m. startled her badly. Through the peephole, she saw a tall woman in a crisp suit, an official-looking badge in her hand. "Ms. Mercer, I'm Special Agent Vivian Hansen with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. I'd like to ask you some questions about Vertex Innovations." Olivia's heart hammered in her chest as she opened the door. "I have a 3-month-old daughter," she said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. "Before we talk, I need to know if I'm under investigation." Agent Hansen's expression softened slightly. "You're not our target, Ms. Mercer, but we believe you have information relevant to our investigation." Over the next 2 hours, Olivia detailed everything: the wrong number text, Jackson's financial assistance, the job offer, the special project investigating acquisition targets, and her discovery of the connection between Jackson and Richard Calloway. Agent Hansen took meticulous notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but offering no insight into the FBI's interest in the case. "What happens now?" Olivia asked when she had finished her account. "That depends partly on you," Agent Hansen replied. "We've been investigating financial irregularities at several tech companies, including Nexus Tech, for months. Your analysis confirms much of what we've already uncovered." "Am I in legal jeopardy for my role in this?" Olivia asked directly. "Based on what you've shared, you were an unwitting participant in a complex situation. Your documentation of events and willingness to cooperate will work in your favor." Agent Hansen handed Olivia her card. If you hear from anyone at Vertex, especially Jackson Donovan or Lawrence Pierce, contact me immediately." After the agent left, Olivia felt oddly hollow. The intensity of the past few hours had drained her completely. She mechanically prepared Zoe's evening bottle, changed her diaper and settled her for sleep, going through the motions while her mind tried to process the implications of the FBI's involvement. Had Jackson been working with the authorities all along, or was he as much a target of their investigation as Calloway and Pierce? Had she been a pawn in some elaborate sting operation, or merely collateral damage in a personal vendetta? Her phone rang at 10:37 p.m., displaying Jackson's number. Remembering Agent Hanson's instructions, she hesitated before answering. "Olivia?" Jackson's voice was strained. "Are you okay? Is Zoe okay?" "We're fine," she replied cautiously. "Unlike my professional reputation and possibly my legal standing." "I need to see you," he said urgently. "Not over the phone. There's more happening than you realize." "The FBI visited me today," Olivia countered. "They seem to think there's quite a lot happening." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Did you speak with Agent Hanson?" The fact that he knew the agent's name sent a fresh wave of unease through Olivia. "I'm not confirming anything until you explain what's going on." "Not over the phone," Jackson repeated. "Pierce has likely compromised our communications. I can come to you or we can meet somewhere public. Your choice." Every instinct told Olivia to cut all ties with Jackson Donovan to protect herself and Zoe from whatever corporate or legal storm was brewing. Yet something in his voice, genuine concern, perhaps even fear, gave her pause. "The coffee shop on the corner of my street," she decided. 30 minutes. I'm bringing someone with me." The last part was a bluff. She had no one to bring, but Jackson didn't need to know that. "Thank you," he said simply before ending the call. Olivia arranged for her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patel, to listen for Zoe through the baby monitor. The kind woman had helped several times during particularly difficult nights and waved away Olivia's profuse thanks. "Babies need their mothers. Well-rested and clear-headed," Mrs. Patel said, with the wisdom of someone who had raised 5 children of her own. "You go handle your business. Zoe and I will be fine." The coffee shop was nearly empty when Olivia arrived, just 2 college students. With laptops in the far corner, she chose a table near the front with clear sight lines to all entrances and exits, her back to the wall, a habit she'd developed during her paralegal days working with nervous witnesses. Jackson arrived precisely on time, alone. He looked nothing like the polished CEO she'd seen on video calls. His silver hair was disheveled, his expensive coat rumpled, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept in days. He scanned the shop before approaching her table. "You said you were bringing someone," he noted, remaining standing. "I lied," Olivia admitted. "Trust goes both ways." Jackson nodded, accepting the rebuke as he sat across from her. "I deserve that." "You deserve a lot more than that," Olivia said sharply. "The FBI, Jackson. Corporate espionage. What have you dragged me into?" "It's not what you think," he began, then stopped himself. "Actually, I don't know what you think, and assumptions have caused enough damage already. Let me start from the beginning." Over the next 30 minutes, Jackson laid out a story far more complex than Olivia had imagined. 3 years ago, he'd begun noticing financial irregularities in Vertex's international divisions. Unexplained expenses, unusual money movements, discrepancies in reported earnings. His initial internal investigation pointed to Lawrence Pierce, but the CFO had powerful allies on the board. "I took what evidence I had to the FBI," Jackson explained. "They opened an investigation but needed more. Pierce was careful, insulated himself well." "So you've been working with the FBI all along?" Olivia asked, struggling to reconcile this with her understanding of events. "As a confidential informant, yes." Jackson's expression was grim. What I didn't know until recently was that Pierce has been systematically targeting companies with financial vulnerabilities for acquisition, then using them to launder money and hide fraud at Vertex. Including Nexus Tech, Olivia said, the pieces starting to align. Richard Callaway's company. Jackson nodded. The connection to Callaway was coincidental at first. I didn't realize Pierce was targeting his company specifically until after our investigation was underway. But once I discovered it, you saw a chance to bring down the man you blame for your son's death, Olivia finished for him. My personal history with Callaway complicated things, Jackson admitted. The FBI was concerned my involvement might compromise the case if my motives were questioned. That's where you came in. You needed an independent analysis, Olivia realized. Someone with no connection to Callaway, no personal vendetta. Someone whose work would be credible to investigators and eventually prosecutors. Jackson confirmed. I didn't manipulate you, Olivia. The job was real. Your qualifications are real. The financial irregularities you uncovered are real. But you withheld crucial information, she countered. You let me think this was just about due diligence for acquisitions. I couldn't tell you about the FBI investigation, Jackson said. Agent Hansen insisted on limiting knowledge to essential personnel, and he hesitated. I was afraid you might walk away if you knew how complicated it was. So instead, you risked my professional reputation and potentially my legal standing, Olivia said, anger rising again. Pierce is threatening legal action against me, Jackson. He's calling it corporate espionage. It's a desperate move, Jackson assured her. He knows we have evidence against him now. He's trying to discredit you before you can testify. Testify? The word sent a chill through Olivia. No one said anything about testifying. Jackson reached across the table, stopping, just short of touching her hand. Your analysis is the linchpin, Olivia. You connected dots that we couldn't. Without your work, Pierce might walk away from this, free to continue using Vertex and its acquisitions as his personal slush fund. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on Olivia's shoulders. She thought of Zoe, sleeping peacefully, under Mrs. Patel's watchful eye, blissfully unaware that her mother was entangled in a high-stakes corporate fraud case. What happens if I walk away? She asked quietly. If I take Zoe and disappear, start over somewhere else? Jackson's expression was pained but understanding. You could. The FBI has enough to move forward, though the case would be weaker. I'd make sure you had the resources to start fresh. And what happens to you? Olivia found herself asking, surprised by how much she cared about the answer. Best case? Pierce and his conspirators are indicted. Vertex survives the scandal, and I spend the next few years rebuilding the company's reputation. Jackson's smile was tired. Worst case? Pierce's allies on the board force me out. The company tanks, and hundreds of innocent employees lose their jobs. And Callaway, Olivia pressed, is this still about revenge for you? Jackson was quiet for a long moment. When Ethan died, something in me broke. The fact that Callaway faced no real consequences, yet it poisoned me. For years I fantasized about making him pay. He met her eyes directly. But this isn't that. Callaway made his own choices. If he's been engaging in financial fraud, that's on him. Justice isn't the same as revenge. There was sincerity in his voice that Olivia wanted to believe. Still, trust once broken wasn't easily repaired. I need time to think, she said finally. This affects more than just me now. I understand, Jackson nodded, but time is something we don't have much of. Pierce is moving quickly to cover his tracks. The FBI plans to execute search warrants tomorrow. As if on cue, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text from Agent Hansen. Need to speak with you again. Available first thing tomorrow? She showed the message to Jackson, whose expression tightened. Sooner than I thought. Olivia, whatever you decide, About your involvement going forward, you need protection tonight. Pierce has resources and connections. If he believes you're a threat..." The implication sent a wave of fear through her. "You think he'd come after me? After Zoe?" "I think a man who's been embezzling millions has a lot to lose," Jackson said carefully. "The FBI can arrange protective custody if you request it." Olivia's mind raced. Protective custody meant displacement, disruption, exactly what Zoe didn't need. Yet the alternative might be worse. "I have a different suggestion," Jackson said, noting her distress. "My building has a secure guest apartment, 24-hour security, private elevator access. You and Zoe would be safe there while this unfolds." "Stay in your building?" Olivia asked incredulously. "How is that not just putting ourselves directly in the line of fire?" "Because it's the last place Pierce would look," Jackson explained. "He thinks we're adversaries now. He's convinced I've abandoned you to take the fall." The strategy had a certain logic, but Olivia wasn't ready to place her and Zoe's safety entirely in Jackson's hands. Not again. "Let me talk to Agent Hansen first," she decided. "Get the FBI's perspective." Jackson nodded, accepting her caution. "Fair enough. I should go. Being seen with you right now could complicate things." He stood, then hesitated. "For what it's worth, Olivia, working with you these past weeks has reminded me of why I built Vertex in the first place. Not for money or power, but to create something meaningful, something with integrity. I lost sight of that after Ethan died." The unexpected vulnerability in his admission caught Olivia off guard. Before she could respond, Jackson had turned and walked away, shoulders straight despite the weight he carried. Back in her apartment, Olivia found Zoe still sleeping peacefully. Mrs. Patel reported the baby hadn't made a peep. "Whatever troubles you're facing, dear," the older woman said kindly, "remember that sunrise always comes, even after the darkest night." Alone again, Olivia called Agent Hansen, who answered despite the late hour. "Mr. Donovan found you," the agent said. "It wasn't a question. He claims he's been working with the FBI all along," Olivia said. "That Pierce is the real target of your investigation." "That's substantially correct," Agent Hansen confirmed, though Mr. Donovan hasn't always been forthcoming about his personal connection to certain aspects of the case. "He thinks I might be in danger," Olivia said, "that Pierce might see me as a threat worth eliminating." There was a pause on the other end. "We don't have specific intelligence suggesting immediate physical danger, but Mr. Pierce has shown himself to be ruthless in protecting his interests. Precautions would be prudent." "Jackson offered his building's guest apartment as a safe location," Olivia explained. "Do you think that's wise?" "It's not standard protocol," Agent Hansen admitted, "but Mr. Donovan's building does have excellent security. We can arrange for an agent to be stationed nearby if that would make you more comfortable." After discussing details and arrangements, Olivia ended the call and began packing essentials for herself and Zoe. The surreal quality of the situation hadn't diminished. Just weeks ago, she'd been a desperate single mother facing eviction. Now she was a key witness in a corporate fraud case, potentially in danger, packing to stay in a luxury building's guest apartment. As she zipped the duffel bag containing their belongings, Olivia's phone chimed with an email notification. The sender was unfamiliar, but the subject line made her freeze. "Your daughter deserves better than a mother who betrays her employers." With shaking hands, she opened the message to find a single line of text. "Walk away now, or Zoe pays the price. Some accidents can't be undone. Ask Jackson about Ethan." The reference to Jackson's son made the threat unmistakably clear. This wasn't a bluff or intimidation tactic. This was someone with intimate knowledge of both her situation and Jackson's past. Someone willing to target a child to protect their interests. Olivia grabbed her phone and Zoe's carrier, no longer concerned about what to pack or what to leave. Nothing mattered now except getting her daughter to safety. As she rushed out the door, she called Agent Hansen again. "I just received a direct threat against my daughter," she said without preamble, her voice tight with controlled panic. "I need help now." "Where are you?" the agent asked, all business. "Leaving my apartment. I don't know where to go." "Head to Donovan's building," Hansen instructed. "I'll have agents meet you there. Don't stop for anyone, don't talk to anyone." As Olivia hurried down the street with Zoe secured against her chest, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every passing car, every shadow, seemed to hide potential danger. The threat against Zoe had changed everything. This was no longer about professional ethics or corporate intrigue. This was about protecting her child from people who had already demonstrated they had no moral boundaries. What she couldn't know was that across town, Jackson Donovan had received a similar message. "You couldn't protect Ethan. What makes you think you can protect Olivia and her baby? End the investigation or accept the consequences." The reference to his son had ignited something in Jackson that years of therapy and grief counseling had never fully extinguished. A primal, protective rage that had once consumed him after Ethan's death. But this time, the anger wasn't directed at circumstances or fate. This time, there was a clear target for his fury: Lawrence Pierce and whoever else was threatening an innocent woman and her child. As Jackson placed a call to his head of security to prepare for Olivia's arrival, he made a silent promise to his son's memory. This time, he wouldn't fail to protect those who needed him. This time, justice would prevail over vengeance. This time, doing the right thing would matter more than personal redemption. What neither Olivia nor Jackson realized was that the threats had originated not from Pierce himself, but from Richard Calloway, the man whose negligence had cost Jackson his son, and who now faced financial ruin and potential criminal charges if Olivia's evidence came to light. For Calloway, the parallels were too perfect to ignore. 8 years ago, a child had died because of his actions. Now, another child's safety hung in the balance because of his financial misdeeds. The question that would determine all their fates was whether Calloway would repeat the mistakes of his past or finally face the consequences of his actions. The lights of the city blurred through the taxi window as Olivia clutched Zoe's carrier to her chest. The baby had mercifully remained asleep during their hasty departure, unaware of the danger that had invaded their lives. Olivia's phone buzzed, with a text from Agent Hansen. "Agents en route to meeting point, ETA 15 minutes. As the taxi approached Jackson's building, a gleaming tower of glass and steel in the city's financial district, Olivia spotted 2 black SUVs parked across the street. Unmarked, but unmistakably federal vehicles. The sight provided little comfort. If the FBI considered the threat serious enough to dispatch multiple agents, the danger was very real. The taxi pulled up to the curb, and Olivia hesitated before stepping out. The building's entrance, with its uniformed doorman and security cameras, suddenly seemed both a sanctuary and a trap. What if Pierce had people inside? What if Calloway had compromised the building's security? Her phone rang. "Jackson, I see you outside," he said without preamble. "Come through the private entrance on the east side. My head of security is waiting. For you." Following his instructions, Olivia found a discreet doorway where a stone-faced man in a suit stood watching. He nodded as she approached, holding the door open without a word. "Mr. Donovan is waiting in the secure elevator," he said, guiding her through a minimalist lobby different from the building's main entrance. "The FBI agents will join you upstairs." The elevator opened to reveal Jackson, his expression tight with concern. "Are you both all right?" he asked immediately, eyes scanning for any sign of harm. "We're unharmed," Olivia confirmed, stepping into the elevator. "But someone threatened Zoe directly. They mentioned Ethan." Jackson's face hardened. "I received a similar message." The elevator began its ascent, smooth and silent. This changes everything. Pierce wouldn't have mentioned Ethan. He doesn't know the details of what happened. This came from Calloway. The elevator opened directly into a spacious apartment on the building's 40th floor. Unlike the sterile luxury Olivia had expected, the space felt almost cozy. Warm lighting, comfortable furniture, bookshelves filled with actual books rather than decorative objects. "This isn't the guest apartment," she noted, stepping cautiously into the space. "No," Jackson admitted. "That was a precaution in case our communications were being monitored. This is my home. It has better security, and no one outside my closest circle knows I actually live here." The revelation of this additional deception should have angered Olivia, but instead she felt a strange relief. Jackson was still strategizing, still thinking. 3 steps ahead to protect them. A soft knock announced the arrival of Agent Hansen and her partner. The agents conducted a thorough sweep of the apartment before settling into a discussion of the immediate threat. The messages established clear intent, Agent Hansen noted, examining the email on Olivia's phone. "This accelerates our timeline. We were planning to execute search warrants tomorrow, but we'll move on Pierce and Calloway tonight." "Will that be enough to protect Olivia and Zoe?" Jackson asked, the edge in his voice betraying his anxiety. "We're assigning protective detail until the immediate threat is neutralized," Agent Hansen assured them. "But the most effective protection is removing the source of the threat." After discussing logistics and security protocols, the agents departed to coordinate the operation, leaving an officer stationed in the hallway outside Jackson's apartment. In the sudden quiet, the reality of their situation settled heavily on Olivia's shoulders. "I should never have involved you in this," Jackson said softly, watching as she gently transferred the still sleeping Zoe to a makeshift crib he had arranged. A designer bassinet that looked brand new. "You didn't give me much choice," Olivia reminded him, though the accusation lacked its earlier bite. "I could have found another way," Jackson insisted. "I was so focused on catching Pierce and exposing Calloway that I didn't consider the potential consequences to you and Zoe." Olivia studied him, noting the genuine remorse in his expression. "Why did you really help me that night, when I texted you by mistake?" Jackson moved to the window, looking out over the city lights. "The text came on the anniversary of Ethan's death," he said quietly. "I'd been sitting here, going through his photos, torturing myself with what-ifs. And then this message appears, a desperate parent needing help for their child." He turned back to face her. It felt like, I don't know, like the universe offering a chance to do something right, to help someone who needed it. "So it was about redemption," Olivia concluded. "Initially, yes," Jackson acknowledged. "I couldn't save my son, but I could help yours. It wasn't entirely altruistic." "Few things are," Olivia said with unexpected gentleness. She understood something about seeking redemption, about the complex motivations behind seemingly simple acts of kindness. "When did you realize who I was?" she asked. "That I had a connection to your company?" "Not until I mentioned the wrong number text to Marcus the next day," Jackson admitted. He recognized the situation immediately from the description. His cousin, single mom, baby, financial struggles. "When he pulled up your resume, I saw an opportunity that served multiple purposes. To help me, to gain an ally against Pierce, and to look like a compassionate CEO in the process," Olivia filled in. "The last part wasn't planned," Jackson said with a hint of a smile, "but it didn't hurt my reputation with the staff." A soft cry from Zoe interrupted their conversation. Olivia moved immediately to comfort her daughter, lifting her from the bassinet with practiced ease. "She's probably hungry," Olivia explained, reaching for the diaper bag that contained prepared formula. "The kitchen's fully stocked," Jackson offered, There's a bottle warmer on the counter. Marcus mentioned you use the hypoallergenic formula. The thoughtful preparation surprised Olivia. Despite everything else happening, Jackson had taken time to ensure her daughter's needs would be met. It was a small gesture, but one that spoke volumes about his character. As she fed Zoe in the quiet kitchen, Olivia's mind worked through the events that had led them here. The initial text, a desperate reach for help, Jackson's unexpected generosity, the job that became something more complicated, the investigation that had placed them all in danger. Each step had seemed reasonable in isolation, each decision justified by circumstances. Yet together they had created a situation that threatened everything she held dear. "We should hear something soon," Jackson said, joining her in the kitchen. He moved with careful respect for her space, keeping a distance that acknowledged the boundaries between them. "What happens after?" Olivia asked. "Assuming Pierce and Calloway are arrested, assuming the threat is eliminated, what then?" Jackson leaned against the counter, considering. "Vertex will need serious restructuring. The board will want to distance themselves from the scandal. There will be lawsuits, regulatory investigations, possibly criminal trials where your testimony will be crucial." "And us?" Olivia pressed. "This strange connection we've developed through crisis and deception?" The directness of her question seemed to catch Jackson off guard. "That depends entirely on you," he said finally. "I've given you plenty of reasons not to trust me. I've complicated your life in ways that can't be easily undone. You've also helped us when we needed it most," Olivia acknowledged, "whatever your initial motivations." Before Jackson could respond, his phone rang with a call from Agent Hansen. He answered on speaker so Olivia could hear. "We've apprehended Pierce," the agent reported. "He was attempting to access the Vertex servers to delete evidence. Calloway is proving more difficult to locate. His house is empty, but there are signs of recent activity." "He's running," Jackson concluded, his expression darkening. "We have alerts at airports, train stations, and major highways," Agent Hansen assured them. "He won't get far." After the call ended, Jackson paced the living room, tension radiating from him. "Calloway running makes him more dangerous, not less," he said. "He has nothing to lose now." Olivia held Zoe closer, the baby now drowsy after feeding. "Should we go somewhere else, if he knows about this apartment?" "He doesn't," Jackson said with certainty. "After Ethan died, I became obsessive about privacy. This place is owned by a shell company that's owned by a trust. There's no connection to me on paper." Despite his assurances, Jackson double-checked the security system, confirming that all entry points were secured and monitored. The protective detail outside had been increased to 2 agents, with others stationed in the lobby and garage. As midnight approached, exhaustion finally caught up with Olivia. Jackson showed her to the guest room, a serene space with its own bathroom and thoughtfully a proper crib. "I had this delivered this evening," he explained, gesturing to the crib. "The FBI sweep confirmed it's secure." "You thought of everything," Olivia murmured, gently laying Zoe down. "Not everything," Jackson said quietly, "or we wouldn't be in this situation." Left alone, Olivia took a moment to absorb her surroundings. The room, like the rest of Jackson's home, revealed a different side of him than his CEO persona suggested. Books on the nightstand, family photos on the dresser, a worn quilt folded at the foot of the bed. This wasn't the sterile habitat of a tech billionaire. It was the home of someone who valued comfort and memories. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by anxiety dreams and the unfamiliar surroundings. Around 3 a.m., Olivia gave up on rest and ventured into the kitchen for water. She found Jackson still awake, sitting at his dining table with multiple laptops open, his silver hair disheveled from repeatedly running his hands through it. "Any news?" she asked, startling him from his concentration. "Nothing definitive," he replied, rubbing his eyes. Calloway's credit cards were used at a gas station near the Canadian border 3 hours ago, but security footage shows it wasn't him. He gave his card to someone else as a diversion. Olivia joined him at the table, noticing the maps and financial records displayed on the screens. "You're tracking him yourself?" "Trying to think like he would," Jackson explained. "Calloway and I were friends once before Ethan. I know how he operates." "Ugh, you believe he'd come here?" Olivia asked, the possibility sending a chill through her. Jackson's expression was grim. "Not to the apartment itself. As I said, he wouldn't know about it. But Calloway has a flair for the dramatic. He wouldn't simply run. He'd want to leave a mark." As if summoned by their conversation, Jackson's phone chimed with an email notification. The sender's address was unfamiliar, but the subject line froze both of them. "A father for a father." Jackson opened the message to find a single line of text. "Central Park Reservoir, East Side, 6 a.m. Come alone or she loses everything, just like you did." "He's here," Jackson said, his voice tight. "In the city." "You can't seriously be considering meeting him," Olivia said, reading the message over his shoulder. "I have to," Jackson replied, already reaching for his phone to call Agent Hansen, but not without backup. The next 2 hours passed in a flurry of strategic planning. The FBI established a perimeter around the meeting location, with snipers positioned at key vantage points and undercover agents scattered throughout the area. Jackson would wear a wire and tracking device, approaching the meeting point alone, as instructed, but with a tactical team hidden nearby. "This is insane," Olivia protested as Jackson prepared to leave. "He's threatened your life, my daughter's life. Let the FBI handle this without you." "Calloway won't show if I'm not there," Jackson insisted. "He wants to face me personally. This is about more than just the financial fraud for him. This is about Ethan, about finishing what began 8 years ago." "That's exactly why you shouldn't go," Olivia argued. "You're emotionally compromised. You can't think clearly where he's concerned." Jackson paused in gathering his things, meeting her gaze directly. "For years after Ethan died, I was consumed by grief and rage. I blamed Calloway, but I also blamed myself for not being there, for trusting him with my son. That guilt nearly destroyed me." His voice strengthened, with conviction. "I won't let it happen again. I won't let another child be harmed because I failed to act." The raw honesty in his words silenced Olivia's objections. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about breaking a cycle of tragedy and regret. "Promise me you'll be careful," she said finally. "Zoe needs her mother, but she also needs the man who helped save us both." The implication of her words, that Jackson had become someone important in their lives, hung in the air between them. Before either could address it, Agent Hansen arrived to escort Jackson to the staging area. "We'll have eyes on him the entire time," the agent assured Olivia. "2 agents will remain here with you and Zoe. If anything goes wrong, they'll move you to a secure location immediately." Left behind in the pre-dawn darkness, Olivia found herself pacing Jackson's living room, checking the sleeping Zoe every few minutes and jumping at every sound from the hallway. The female agent stationed in the apartment, Agent Rivera, watched her with understanding. "He's well protected," Rivera offered. "Our team is the best at what they do." "It's not just the physical danger I'm worried about," Olivia admitted. "Calloway represents everything that broke Jackson after his son died. Facing him this way, it could reopen wounds that never fully healed. Sometimes facing our demons is the only way to banish them," Rivera said quietly. As 6 a.m. approached, Olivia's anxiety peaked. The male agent, Carter, had positioned himself by the door, hand resting near his holstered weapon. Rivera maintained communication with the field team through an earpiece, occasionally providing updates that revealed little. Subject approaching. Designated meeting point. No visual on Calloway yet. Perimeter secure. At precisely 6 a.m., Rivera's posture changed, tension radiating through her as she pressed the earpiece closer. "Visual contact established," she reported. "Calloway is on site, approaching Donovan now." Olivia held her breath, imagining the scene unfolding in the park. Jackson standing alone in the early morning light, Calloway emerging from the shadows, both men carrying the weight of an 8-year-old tragedy between them. "They're talking," Rivera continued, her expression focused as she listened to the transmission. "Calloway is agitated, Donovan maintaining composure." The minutes stretched unbearably. Zoe stirred in her crib, sensing her mother's distress even in sleep. Olivia moved to comfort her, one ear still attuned to Rivera's updates. Suddenly the agent's hand flew to her weapon. Movement detected. "Calloway has a weapon. Teams moving in." Olivia's heart stopped. "Jackson, suspect subdued," Rivera reported, relief evident in her voice. "Donovan is unharmed. Calloway in custody." The tension drained from Olivia so suddenly that she had to sit, her legs no longer able to support her. Zoe, now awake, gurgled happily, oblivious to the drama that had just concluded miles away. It was nearly 9 a.m. when Jackson returned to the apartment, escorted by Agent Hansen. He looked exhausted, but strangely peaceful, as though a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. "It's over," he said simply, meeting Olivia's questioning gaze. "Calloway confessed to everything, the financial fraud, the threats, even his negligence with Ethan. He's cooperating in exchange for consideration during sentencing." What happened out there?" Olivia asked, sensing there was more to the story than a simple arrest. Jackson sank onto the couch, the events of the morning catching up with him. "He wanted to apologize," he said, disbelief still evident in his voice. 8 years too late, but he actually wanted to apologize for Ethan, said the guilt had been destroying him all these years. "Do you believe him?" Olivia asked gently, sitting beside him. "I don't know," Jackson admitted. "But standing there, looking at this broken man who once was my friend, I realized something. Holding on to hate was poisoning me just as much as guilt was poisoning him." He looked at her directly. "When he pulled the gun, I wasn't even afraid. All I could think about was you and Zoe, about getting back here safely." The confession hung in the air between them, vulnerable and honest, in a way their previous interactions had never been. Before Olivia could respond, Agent Hansen interrupted with practical matters, statements to be given, evidence to be reviewed, protective measures to be maintained until all conspirators were accounted for. As the day progressed, news of the arrests broke publicly. Lawrence Pierce and Richard Calloway's names headlined financial news networks, the story of corporate fraud and personal vendetta unfolding in sensationalized snippets that captured only fragments of the truth. Jackson's phone rang constantly with calls from board members, executives, and attorneys, all demanding explanations and reassurances. Through it all, Olivia observed a transformation in him, a steady clarity that hadn't been present before. Each call was handled with decisive purpose, each decision made with consideration for the company's future, rather than personal vindication. By evening, the immediate crisis had stabilized enough for the FBI to reduce their presence to a single agent in the hallway. Jackson ordered dinner for them, simple comfort food rather than the expensive cuisine his position might have suggested. As they ate, Zoe nestled contentedly in a portable high chair Jackson had somehow procured. The conversation turned to what would come next. "The board wants an emergency meeting tomorrow," Jackson explained. "They'll need to decide how to move forward, whether to continue with the planned acquisitions, how to address the fraud publicly, whether I remain as CEO. "They'd consider removing you?" Olivia asked, surprised. "You exposed the fraud. You protected the company." "I also conducted an unauthorized investigation using company resources," Jackson pointed out. Some would say I put personal vengeance above corporate interests. And did you? Olivia challenged. Jackson considered the question seriously. Initially, perhaps, but something changed along the way. His gaze shifted to Zoe, who was happily gumming a soft piece of bread. Working with you, seeing your dedication to Zoe, reminded me of what really matters. It's not about punishment or revenge. It's about creating something worth protecting, something that outlasts us. The simple wisdom of his statement resonated with Olivia's own journey, from desperate single mother to key witness in a corporate fraud case, from victim of circumstance to active architect of her future. Whatever the board decides, she said, you've done the right thing, not just for Vertex, but for yourself. Jackson smiled, the expression transforming his tired face. Speaking of doing the right thing, regardless of what happens with the company, I want to ensure you and Zoe are taken care of. The job offer from Diana Winters is still valid, confirmed this afternoon, but if you'd prefer a fresh start elsewhere, I'll make sure you have the resources you need. The offer was generous, but Olivia recognized it contained an unspoken question about their future, whether the connection forged through crisis could evolve into something more enduring. Let's get through tomorrow first, she suggested. One day at a time. As they cleared the dinner dishes together, moving around each other with a comfortable familiarity that belied their brief acquaintance, Olivia realized that the wrong number text that had started their journey had led to something neither of them could have anticipated. Not just resolution of past trauma or financial security, but the possibility of a shared future built on truth rather than deception. What she couldn't know was that Jackson was already envisioning that future, one where his empty penthouse became a home again, where Zoe's laughter filled spaces long silent, where the wounds of the past, finally, healed through the promise of tomorrow. 6 months after the dramatic arrest of Lawrence Pierce and Richard Calloway, Olivia stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new office, watching the city transition from autumn to winter. The trees in the park below had shed their vibrant foliage, their bare branches etched against the November sky like intricate charcoal drawings. The view from the legal department of Vertex Innovations offered a daily reminder of how dramatically her life had transformed. Zoe's cheerful babbling drew Olivia's attention back to the playpen set up in the corner of her spacious office. At 9 months old, her daughter was becoming increasingly mobile, pulling herself up on furniture and cruising along edges with determined concentration. The baby caught her mother watching and broke into a gummy smile that never failed to melt Olivia's heart. Ms. Mercer, her assistant's voice came through the intercom. The board meeting has concluded. Mr. Donovan is on his way up. Thank you, Eric, Olivia replied, smoothing her charcoal pencil skirt and straightening the framed law degree on her wall. A recent addition after she'd completed her final credits through an accelerated program supported by Vertex's educational assistance benefit. The 6 months since the arrests had been transformative on multiple fronts. Diana Winters had not only honored the job offer, but had created a special compliance division with Olivia as its head. The position had come with resources to complete her long-deferred law degree, a salary that had allowed her to move into a comfortable apartment near the office, and a flexibility that accommodated both her ongoing physical therapy and Zoe's needs. The company itself had undergone equally dramatic changes. After a tumultuous emergency board meeting the day after the arrests, Jackson had emerged with a mandate to restructure Vertex and restore its reputation. 3 board members with ties to Pierce had resigned. The planned acquisitions had been put on hold, pending thorough financial reviews. And Jackson had implemented a series of transparency measures that had gradually rebuilt investor confidence. The soft knock at her door signaled Jackson's arrival. He entered with the quiet confidence that had become his hallmark during the company's reconstruction. Gone was the frenetic energy of a CEO with something to prove, replaced by the measured purpose of a leader with clear vision. "How did it go?" Olivia asked, noting the slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "The board approved the new compliance framework," he announced. "Your division officially has oversight authority for all acquisitions and international operations." Olivia exhaled in relief. They had spent months developing the framework, creating a system of checks and balances that would prevent another Pierce from exploiting corporate loopholes for personal gain. Having the board's formal approval meant the changes would survive, even if leadership changed. "That's not all," Jackson continued, moving to the playpen to greet Zoe, who reached up for him with practiced expectation. He lifted her with ease, a gesture that had become natural over months of regular interaction. They also approved the employee ownership program and the childcare center expansion. These initiatives had been particularly important to Olivia. The employee ownership program would distribute a percentage of company shares to staff at all levels, while the childcare expansion would triple the capacity of Vertex's on-site facility, prioritizing positions for children of single parents and those with medical needs. "That's wonderful," Olivia said sincerely, "especially the childcare expansion. Do you know how many working parents this will help?" Jackson bounced Zoe gently as she played with his tie. "According to HR, we have a waiting list of 47 employees with children under 5. The expansion will accommodate all of them, plus create capacity for future needs." The achievement represented months of careful planning and advocacy, transforming Vertex from a typical tech company focused solely on innovation and profit into a model of corporate responsibility. The journey hadn't been easy. Shareholders had initially resisted what they saw as unnecessary expenses, and the business press had questioned whether Jackson's soft approach would undermine competitiveness. "The quarterly numbers helped," Jackson acknowledged, reading her thoughts, "proving that ethical practices and profitability aren't mutually exclusive was key to winning over the skeptics." Indeed, Vertex's stock had gradually recovered after the initial shock of the fraud revelations, with the most recent quarter showing stronger than expected earnings. The company's enhanced reputation for integrity had attracted new clients concerned about regulatory compliance, offsetting any losses from the more cautious approach to acquisitions. "Will you join us for dinner tonight?" Jackson asked, transitioning to a more personal topic. "My mother's in town and keeps asking when she'll see her grandbaby again." The relationship that had developed between them over the past 6 months defied simple categorization. They weren't exactly dating in the conventional sense. Both were too busy with their respective responsibilities at Vertex and too conscious of potential corporate gossip. Yet they had gradually built something deeper than friendship, centered initially around Zoe, but evolving into a partnership of shared values and mutual respect. Jackson's mother had embraced Zoe with unexpected enthusiasm, finding in the child a second chance at the grandmotherly role that Ethan's death had cut short. For Olivia, who had lost her own mother in her teens, Eleanor Donovan's warm presence had filled a void she hadn't fully acknowledged. "We'd love to," Olivia agreed, watching as Zoe patted Jackson's face with delighted familiarity. "But I need to finish reviewing the Thompson contract first." Legal found some concerning language in the intellectual property section. "Take all the time you need," Jackson assured her. "Mother will be happy whenever you arrive." He carefully returned Zoe to her playpen, much to the baby's vocal disappointment. "I should get back. The SEC compliance team is waiting for signatures on the quarterly disclosures." After he left, Olivia turned back to the contract on her desk, but found her thoughts drifting to the journey that had brought her here. The desperate text message sent to a wrong number had seemed like just another failure in a life that had become a series of them The accident that had derailed her career, the boyfriend who had abandoned her during pregnancy, the financial crisis that had nearly cost them their home. Yet that seeming mistake had set in motion a chain of events that had not only secured her and Zoe's future, but had transformed an entire company's culture and helped a grieving father find purpose beyond vengeance. The symmetry felt almost too perfect to be coincidental, as though some unseen hand had guided her fingers to transpose those two critical digits in her cousin's phone number. Later that evening, as Olivia prepared to leave the office with Zoe, her phone chimed with a text notification. The sender was unfamiliar, but the message sent a jolt of recognition through her. "Sorry to bother you, wrong number. I need $700 for rent or my kids, and I will be evicted tomorrow. If you can help, I'll pay you back next week." Olivia stared at the text, wondering if it was some elaborate prank or strange coincidence. Then a second message appeared. "I'm so sorry, please ignore that. It was meant for my brother." The parallel to her own desperate text from 6 months ago was uncanny. Olivia hesitated only briefly before responding. "I understand what you're going through. I've been there. I might be able to help. What's your situation?" The reply came quickly. "Who is this? How did you get this number?" "My name is Olivia," she typed. "You texted me by mistake, but sometimes mistakes lead us exactly where we need to go." After a moment's hesitation, she added her office address and an invitation to meet the following morning. Whatever this person's story, Olivia now had the resources and position to offer meaningful assistance, not just financial, but perhaps a path to sustainable independence, as Vertex was actively expanding its entry-level positions, with an emphasis on parents returning to the workforce. When she showed Jackson the exchange over dinner that evening, his expression shifted from surprise to thoughtful consideration. "It's almost poetic," he mused, glancing at Zoe, who was contentedly exploring a plate of mashed vegetables under Eleanor's watchful eye. "A full-circle moment. Or an opportunity to pay it forward," Olivia suggested. "I was thinking we could create something more formal, a program for parents facing financial emergencies, maybe partnered with job training and placement services." Jackson's eyes lit with interest. Vertex could provide the initial funding and infrastructure, but it should be independent enough to help people regardless of whether they become employees. "Exactly," Olivia agreed, excitement building as the concept took shape. "We could call it the Second Chance Initiative." Eleanor, who had been quietly listening to their exchange, interjected with gentle wisdom. "You know, in my 70 years, I've come to believe there are very few true coincidences. This wrong number finding its way to you, just as yours found its way to Jackson, feels like more than random chance." The older woman's perspective resonated with something Olivia had been feeling but hadn't articulated. Their journey hadn't been smooth or straightforward. It had involved deception, danger, and difficult ethical choices. Yet through those complications, something genuinely good had emerged, not just for them personally, but for everyone touched by the ripple effects of their connection. The next morning, Olivia arrived at her office early to prepare for her meeting with the wrong number texter. She had brought extra toys to keep Zoe entertained and had asked Eric to arrange coffee and breakfast pastries, small comforts that might ease what would likely be an uncomfortable encounter for someone in financial distress. At precisely 9:30, Eric announced the arrival of Mia Sanderson. The woman who entered Olivia's office looked to be in her early 30s, with the exhausted yet vigilant expression Olivia recognized from her own mirror 6 months earlier. Behind her trailed 2 children, a boy of about 7 and a girl who appeared to be 4 or 5. "Ms. Mercer?" Mia asked hesitantly, clearly intimidated by the corporate environment. "I'm not sure why I'm here, but your text said—" "Please, call me Olivia," she interrupted gently, rising to greet her visitors. And you must be Mia. These are your children. Tyler and Emma, Mia confirmed, her hand resting protectively on her daughter's shoulder. I still don't understand what this is about. How do you want to help exactly? Rather than answering directly, Olivia gestured to the comfortable seating area away from her desk. Why don't we sit down? The kids can play with Zoe's toys if they'd like. As the children cautiously explored the well-stocked play area, Olivia shared a simplified version of her own story. The wrong number text to Jackson, her financial struggles as a single mother, the opportunity that had changed everything. She watched understanding dawn in Mia's eyes, followed by a fragile hope that she seemed afraid to embrace fully. So, you're saying this isn't some kind of scam? Mia asked bluntly. Because I've had enough people promising to help, only to make things worse. Olivia appreciated the woman's directness. Not a scam, she assured her. Just someone who's been where you are now, who has the means to help, and who believes that everyone deserves a second chance when circumstances knock them down. Over the next hour, Mia's story emerged. A teaching assistant position lost to budget cuts, a bitter custody battle that had drained her savings, and a series of medical bills from her son's asthma treatments that had pushed her to the financial breaking point. She had skills and education, but lacked the stability and childcare support needed to secure appropriate employment. Here's what I'm proposing, Olivia said after listening carefully. First, immediate assistance with your rent situation. No loans, no repayment expected, just a bridge to get you stabilized. Second, if you're interested, Vertex has several administrative positions opening in our expanded departments. They include flexible scheduling, comprehensive benefits, and access to our on-site childcare facility. Mia's expression cycled through disbelief, suspicion, and cautious hope. Why would you do this for a complete stranger? Because 6 months ago, I was that stranger sending desperate texts, Olivia replied simply, and someone took a chance on me that changed everything. By the time Jackson stopped by around noon to check on the meeting, Olivia had arranged for Mia's rent to be paid, scheduled interviews with HR for 2 potential positions, and enrolled her children for temporary emergency care in Vertex's childcare center while she completed the application process. I see it went well, Jackson observed after Mia and her children had departed with Eric, who was giving them a tour of the facilities. Better than I expected, Olivia confirmed. She has an associate's degree in business administration and experience in educational settings. She'd be perfect for the new administrative team supporting the compliance division. Jackson smiled, watching Zoe determinedly stack blocks on the carpet. You know, when I first helped you, it was partly selfish, seeking redemption, distraction from grief, maybe even subconsciously looking for someone to help me expose Pierce and Calloway. And now? Olivia prompted. Now I understand something I'd lost sight of after Ethan died, he said thoughtfully. The point isn't to fix the past or even to make up for it. It's to create a future where the lessons of that past actually matter, where they change how we live and what we build. The insight struck Olivia as profound in its simplicity. Their shared journey had been about exactly that. Not erasing past traumas or mistakes, but transforming them into foundations for something better. The following weeks saw the formal launch of the Second Chance Initiative, with Mia Sanderson becoming its first official success story. The program quickly expanded beyond Vertex, with other companies in the city adopting similar models tailored to their industries. Local media coverage highlighted the initiative's innovative approach to combining immediate financial relief with sustainable employment opportunities, particularly for single parents. 3 months later, as winter gave way to early spring, Olivia found herself once again standing at her office window, watching the first green buds appear on the park's trees. Behind her, Zoe practiced newly acquired walking skills, wobbling between furniture pieces with delighted determination. Jackson entered without knocking, a privilege he alone enjoyed, carrying a small wrapped package and wearing an expression that immediately piqued Olivia's curiosity. "What's the occasion?" she asked as he handed her the gift. "1 year ago. Today," he explained, "you sent a text message to the wrong number, my number, asking for help with formula for Zoe." Olivia blinked in surprise. "Has it really been a year already?" "To the day," Jackson confirmed. "It seemed worth commemorating." Inside the package, Olivia found a silver frame containing a printed screenshot of her original desperate text message, elegantly mounted with the date preserved. The simple presentation transformed what had been a moment of humiliation and failure into something worth celebrating. The beginning of their shared story. "I love it," she said sincerely, setting the frame on her desk, where both she and visitors would see it. A reminder that sometimes what seems like our lowest moment can actually be the turning point. "That's not all," Jackson said, his expression shifting to something more serious. "The board meeting this morning wasn't just about quarterly results. I proposed a restructuring of executive leadership." Olivia felt a flicker of concern. "What kind of restructuring?" "I've decided to step back from day-to-day operations as CEO," he explained. "I'll remain as chairman, focusing on strategic direction and corporate governance, but the company needs a different kind of leadership for its next phase of growth." The announcement wasn't entirely surprising. Over recent months, Jackson had increasingly delegated operational responsibilities while focusing on broader initiatives like the Second Chance program. Still, the timing seemed significant. "Why now?" Olivia asked directly. Jackson moved to the window, watching the same budding trees that had caught Olivia's attention earlier. "After everything that happened with Pierce and Calloway, I realized I've been running Vertex partly as a monument to what I lost, a way to prove that Ethan's death didn't destroy everything I cared about." He turned back to face her, his expression open and vulnerable in a way he rarely allowed others to see. "But this past year, working with you, watching Zoe grow, building something that helps others find their second chances, it's shown me there's more to legacy than just corporate success." "So what's next for you?" Olivia asked, sensing there was more to this decision than corporate restructuring. Jackson smiled, the expression reaching his eyes in a way that still made her heart skip slightly. "That depends partly on you. I've purchased a house outside the city, nothing extravagant, but with a yard for Zoe to play in, space for a home office, and proximity to excellent schools. I'd like you to see it." The implication hung in the air between them, neither explicitly stated nor hidden. Their relationship had evolved gradually over the past year, progressing from cautious professional collaboration to deep personal connection. They had been careful to maintain appropriate boundaries at work while allowing their private lives to intertwine naturally around Zoe, who had come to see Jackson as a consistent and loving presence. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" Olivia said, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling beneath the surface. "I'm asking if you're ready for us to stop pretending we're just colleagues who happen to have dinner together 4 nights a week," Jackson replied with gentle humor. "I'm asking if you're ready for us to build something permanent, not just for Vertex or the Second Chance initiative, but for ourselves and for Zoe." Before Olivia could respond, Zoe chose that moment to take her first completely unassisted steps, 5 wobbling but determined strides directly from the couch to Jackson's legs, which she grabbed with triumphant giggles. They both froze, witnessing the milestone with matching expressions of wonder. Then Jackson knelt to Zoe's level, receiving her excited babbling with appropriate enthusiasm while meeting Olivia's gaze over the child's head. The moment crystallized. Everything their journey had been building toward, not just professional success or financial security, but a family forged through unlikely circumstances, mutual respect, and shared purpose. "Yes," Olivia said simply, her decision made with the same clarity that had guided her through every pivotal moment since that first, desperate text. "I'd like to see the house." What had begun as a mistake, digits transposed in a moment of desperation, had transformed not just their individual lives, but an entire community through the ripple effects of that single connection. As Olivia watched Jackson lift Zoe in celebration of her first steps, she reflected that perhaps there were no true mistakes in life, only unexpected pathways to destinations we couldn't have imagined for ourselves. The wrong number had led her exactly where she needed to be. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.